Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 4th episode of the It Be Like That podcast with the same host that we've had for the first 3 episodes. Me, Nikib, Tamid, Pratik, and Rafi. This week we have, we're actually diving into something a little bit more on the nose of what we really wanted to make this podcast about, which is just philosophical topics, sci-fi topics, anything like that that we can really wrap our head around. But before we even get started with the episode, I kind of wanted to shout out everyone that has tuned in. We're hovering around 34 unique listeners, have around 140 streams, 50 streams, starts, around 75 streams, and one listener from Brazil. So we are doing a lot better than we expected to, and I really want to thank everyone that is listening so far. So thank you guys very much. And we're just going to jump right into it. This week, before we actually get started with the topic, something interesting happened. I think that's been the talking point around the whole world recently, is the election just concluded. Joe Biden wins with, I believe, 280 something electoral college.
284, I believe. I can double check that.
284 electoral college votes.
290 now.
It's 290.
Sure.
In summary,
Nice.
he won.
He did win.
Most blue or dominantly blue states and cities are partying. Probably not.
New York is really partying it up right now.
Yeah,
I don't know
probably
if you guys
not.
saw
Probably not as the best thing to do. Probably not the best thing to do while
least
we're
they're
in the
wearing
middle
masks.
of a pandemic.
Pretty bad.
But I think we all just wanted to share initial thoughts because it'd be difficult to avoid, such a massive thing to happen. So I'm gonna leave the floor here and open it up to discussion. Anyone who wants to start, by all means.
Ask, where were you guys when you found out the news?
Oh, I have a funny one for this one. This was jokes.
Oh, yeah, so do I. But yeah.
Oh, yeah? Okay, so this is really goofy, but I was actually out with okay, we set this up last week. I was out with Layla.
Layla.
And my mom gives me a call
Layla?
and she's like, "Hey, did you hear he won?" And I was like, "Really?" And she's like, "Yeah." Now here's the thing: is my mom, great woman, but she's a little too cautious and or a little too paranoid at times, right? Like especially with COVID, she's been taking things really safe, and really careful. But what she's most worried about is she thinks that riots and protests will get us killed, or that all it takes is one Trump supporter with a assault rifle to just start shooting it up. Now, I don't think that's very practical. My mother's just a bit more worried. So I'm out. I get a phone call while I'm driving, and she says, "Hey, he won." I'm like, "Great." And then she's like, "So what time are you coming home? Get home real soon." And I was like, "I'll be home sometime in the evening. Don't worry. I'm not gonna die." And it was just jokes. It was I found out from her, or I think I found out a little before her, but she was the one who first contacted me literally a little after I found out. And her first thoughts are, "Please don't die out there because Biden won."
I was also not home. I was tutoring my little cousin in Long Island, and while I let her use the bathroom and give her a little break, my aunt comes into the room and she's like, "Oh, I'm really stressed out. I think something's going on behind the scenes." And the thing is, my aunt and uncle, those guys, they're pretty well educated and they know their way around this kind of stuff, more than our parents really do. She comes in, she's like, "I wonder if anything's happening," and I'm like, "It's probably nothing. It's just mail-in ballots, and it's taking a lot of time to count. There's also recounts, or there's times to fix your count until the 10th for Nevada and stuff like that." And we were talking for maybe 10 minutes. Then I tell my cousin, I was like, "Oh, hey, I give you some more problems. Finish these up." And my aunt's like, "All right, I'll go." She goes back into her office, and then all of a sudden I hear "Oh my God, holy shit!" Right? And I'm like, "What happened? What did you find out something cool?" And she's like, "No, he won." Is literally the second she walks back into the office.
Nice.
And so I was just like, "Oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder which state actually made him win." And then it was just on my way home. I was also very scared of traffic because I was in Long Island, half Trump country, so I was also kind of afraid of someone looking at me and be like, "Hey, fuck you,"
Oh, quick thing on Trump country. I was in Long Island at the time, around Huntington, right? and we saw this one SUV with a big old Trump pirate flag on the back, and it was just like all I could think was this guy is gonna go home and be a little
Yeah.
bit unhappy, but he's just broadcasting his unhappiness to everyone around him.
Yeah, I mean, I work at a hospital with 50% pretty much Trump supporters. So all these white people that looked at me sideways while I was working for the last few weeks are definitely gonna
Everyone
look at me
thinking
sideways
you
now.
will be deported is just sitting there like, damn, that one colored
Yeah.
kid, he got away.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna get deported after
Yeah,
all.
like me and my engineer, like my engineer is black and I'm brown, so like we are just two
essence of
minorities walking
Kamala?
around the hospital. Oh, the essence of Kamala. What about you guys? Pratik, Rafi?
Yeah.
So I was just at home. I think one of my friends messaged me in the group chat like, "Oh, Biden won." I'm like, "Huh, really?" I just look up online, see that Biden won. Then I go tell my mom Biden won, and then that's really it.
That's
It was
probably
very
the most
normal.
COVID reaction to Biden winning, right?
I was
Like
at home. Like,
exactly,
what-
you were
exactly.
home, someone told you, you Googled it, a little bit of joy, and then you're done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's it.
Pratik?
The first thing I did was check the elections, and it was still, not. It was 270 still hadn't passed, and then I put my headphones on. I was like, "Fuck, when is this shit gonna end?" Started listening to music. I started taking a shit, and then I hear like pots and pans like banging, and I was like, "Oh fuck, my mom dropped something," and it just
Oh, no.
keeps on going, right? And then I take off my headphones and I hear everyone like outside, like clapping at everything, and I realize I looked up the elections, and yeah, they won. And that's how I found out.
Oh, you found out from people celebrating?
Yeah, no, people were like banging pots and pans and like
Oh,
screaming,
cool.
What?
You know, funny note about the celebrations that I didn't know. I mean, I guess I should have expected people would celebrate, but I didn't know about it till I got home. And I guess it's because, like, again, I was in Long Island at the time. And for anyone who's listening who isn't aware of this, like, New York is a very blue state in general for when it comes to federal elections. But as a state, New York City is incredibly Democrat. But upstate New York, like the majority of it, not counting certain cities, and most of Long Island is hyper Republican, right? So again, I'm out in Huntington. I get the news that Trump won, or Jesus Christ, that Biden won.
Yeah.
And I look around and I didn't even like no celebrations. Everyone's acting like it's business as usual. Day goes by, right? And then I get home and it's like Washington Square Park, Central Park. People are celebrating. It's like, oh, that makes sense. I wonder why I didn't see any celebrations in Long Island. Damn.
I mean, just like just like any other like state where they have major cities, like in areas where there's a lot of I guess a lot of density. That's where they're generally democratic. So like New York may be overwhelmingly blue, but that's because of the massive fucking population of New York City.
Oh,
You know?
absolutely.
So because of that, like it is skewed. But again, population and popular vote. I don't want to get into all that. But afterwards,
You don't want to talk about abolishing the electoral college and
that is not what we're
individual
talking about today.
votes?
That is not what we're talking about today. But I came home and I was talking to my parents, and right, my dad was like my dad was still like, not like anything about Trump. He was still like, if I was like to be completely objective, my dad was trying to be objective. Is like, besides all the bullshit that Trump has done, and besides all like anything that in terms of scandal, he was really trying to look at it in terms of what has actually happened in the country. And from our perspective, like at least from the minority perspective, it really hasn't done much. My dad was really like wanting to die on this hill that like he gave us money. I was like, are you saying that any other president wouldn't have give us money? Like it does makes no sense, right? So when I told him that, and I was like, and then he tried to move on to a different point. I was like, please answer me. Like, and every president had to give a stimulus check because of the economic standpoint that we were at during coronavirus. But with President Biden,
President-elect, technically.
President-elect Biden, we shall see what ends up happening. I have high hopes because we have a sane person, I'd say, in office. But again, politicians are politicians at the end of the day. This one was just a battle of sanity.
Bell, sanity, democracy. But anyway, that's not a rant we should get into now.
Yeah. Really.
Sorry, Pratik, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think that this is more of a we settled for this. I don't think anyone's specifically happy that Biden and Kamala won. Don't get me wrong, this is a great win for women, for black people, and for Asians. But I think it's a bigger thing that we kicked Trump out of office. I think that's the main goal, and I think everyone's really happy and like parting that up rather than putting a 77-year-old in there. I'd rather
I
have a
don't
younger
disagree with
candidate.
you on that. I think it's less so. Like you're right. I think a lot of people who are happy are less happy about hey Biden won and more happy about Trump is finally out because of what Trump stands for and or what he's done and represents in terms of like the ugliness in politics and sort of the overt corruption.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it's also like Biden winning is also like a very it's like a return to form in terms of having a president who can actually be presidential, right? For lack of a better term. I think one of the biggest things is, and I kind of want to go back for a second. Nikki, you're talking about your dad sort of trying to just take a second and objectively consider what has Trump done, right?
Mhm.
What's so bad? Why does he get such a bad rap, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, actually, I had this conversation with my mother earlier today. Conveniently as it is, um, my mother told me that hey, like if you think about it, it's crazy that we got through 4 years of Trump, right? Now she said that under very different context because prior to that we were talking about how even though Biden's won all these electoral votes, Trump still has roughly 2.5 months to pull whatever shenanigans he can
Yeah.
pull,
Yeah. I
right?
was thinking about that too.
And of course, you can't rule anything out because Trump is Trump, right? He will do whatever, toss whatever political conventions there are, whatever traditions there are for his own purposes. Um, but when I was talking to my mom, she said, "Oh no, it's crazy that we got through 4 years. Like when he got elected, we were all dreading it, but we got through 4 years and we're still here." And as I was talking to my mom, I explained to her that you're right, we did get through it, but we were fortunate enough to get through it, right? Throughout his presidency, there are so many families that didn't make it. That didn't make it either because members or whole families were deported by ICE when they otherwise would have had different processes or may not have been deported to begin with. There are families that have lost loved ones or, um, lost members of of their family because of COVID, and for us to say, yeah, we made it, it wasn't so bad, it's sort of like taking things out of context that there are a lot more people who were actually hurt by this presidency, right? It wasn't just a matter of I differ opinions with you. Livelihoods were torn apart because of this person, right?
I think a lot of it, like a bit of it is like a tiny like essence of Stockholm syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where it's more acceptance and being like, hey, we got through it. It's like we shouldn't have had to go through it. We shouldn't have had to fear to not get back into the country uh because of a Muslim man, right? Obviously,
Right.
Bangladesh was not greatly affected, but what if it was? Just because we
We
like
never made it
technically
to the Muslim ban, right? It
no.
was stuff like UAE or like African countries.
I think a few Middle Eastern
There's no
countries.
ban.
I
Yeah, a
think
bunch of
like
Middle Eastern for
Iran.
sure.
I mean, I like whatever the political reasons behind Bangladesh not being on the list. It could have been, very much.
You're exactly right,
Like
right? Just because we weren't individually targeted doesn't mean that others weren't.
exactly right. Like the fact that we didn't have to fear it is not a justification of it was okay. Uh, like the thing is a lot of because of our parents being immigrants and like that this idea really I feel like really stems from the concept that they're immigrants is they come here and they fight for themselves. You know what I'm saying? You come here and you fight for your own livelihood and thinking about other people in this country really comes as a second thought because you come here with nothing and you come here to defend yourself and your people. So when we tell our parents like, hey, like these other people are getting harmed, it really doesn't click because their entire lives no one helped them,
Right.
or at least in this country.
Is it
The only
sort of
people that
like
helped them.
an empathy thing that they've had
Yeah.
to deal with these things on their own, so other people can also deal with these things on their own?
Yeah. That's my like logic behind why, you tell them these things and they kind of shrug it off.
Hmm.
Um like in my own experiences, like I grew up around such a diverse community, and grew up around so many people that I feel for it, right? I might not be directly affected by it, but I will feel empathy towards my community, specifically New York City, right? Like feel for the people that deal with like the NYPD, but like the NYPD, like we deal with it. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Looking the way that we do. Systemic racism in New York, right? The way we look defines what people expect of you, things like that. But our parents, that is a minor issue because they came here with literally nothing and fought their way to where they are today. And that's why like I kind of justify the way they think, and like I don't argue too much about like making them understand even though I try my best. It's not like the be all end all because I understand where they come from.
That makes a lot of sense. I do want to touch on one last thing before we do move on from this, and it's sort of something that your dad had mentioned. That I think, if I remember correctly, you had said that your dad kind of got caught up on the idea or the fact that Trump had given like the stimulus checks out,
Yeah.
and it's kind of going back to, unfortunately, for better or worse, that's what he's really good at, is the branding, is the putting himself out there, is rallying his name and rallying support for himself. And specifically, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when the stimulus checks were coming out, and I think a little after it came out, there was a lot of controversy in that this was the first time the government was doing stimulus checks in which the president had his name printed on the checks, right?
I'm dead.
Do you remember this, or do
Yeah, I
you?
remember. I do remember this.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
literally every time we've had a stimulus check, in most recent memory, not counting the one that we had under Trump's presidency, was the stimulus checks during the Obama presidency, right, during the economic recession of 2008 or so. Um, stimulus checks are issued by the Treasury Department, right, the federal government's Treasury Department. Um, it's meant to be like, hey, the federal government in its totality, Congress, presidency, like all together, is giving the people this money. Whereas when Trump was sending out stimulus checks, his first thing was, I want to put my name on it as the sender, which is legally not allowed because that's not how the money works, and it's not coming from Trump's bank account, it's coming from the Treasury. And instead, they put it on the memo as, this money is coming from Trump, right? Like I think in the memo was President Trump was written all over the checks, and it led to delays. And sort of like, it's so easy for people who don't stay up to date on the news, because that's fine. Everyone has things to do. Everyone has other concerns. But to just sort of think about, oh, what were the good things? I got the money. The money said it
Yeah.
was from the president. He gave me the money. He benefited me. So was he really all that bad, right? And it's like, it's unfortunate that it's so easy for someone like Trump to like make his brand so well known
Oh,
and easily likable, in spite of the dumb,
yeah.
reckless, or idiotic things he does.
We haven't even like talked about the antagonization of the press and the illegitimizing of the press, right? Of mass media, like critically acclaimed, not even critical. I don't even know what the right word is, but
Like actual, like either peer reviewed
yeah,
or legitimate journalists
yeah.
being considered frauds.
Yeah, right. And so many news anchors and
Outlets.
journalists and outlets, yeah, like they came out saying this, like essentially crying on the air because they've been harassed, because they've been demonized because of what the president of the United States has said. That's like another piece of it that like I really, again, getting into is going to be a
I
long
mean, we
time.
can spend
You know,
forever talking
yeah, we
about
can talk
this
about
because there's
this whole
so many
podcast,
different things.
right?
But yeah, no, that's all. That's a different episode for a different
Yeah.
podcast.
There's also like global perception of the US. But we didn't really set up this like this week's episode to talk about this. But before we move on, Pratik, Rafi, do you guys have anything you want to say? Last thoughts?
Uh, so like I guess my opinion on like Biden winning, like yeah, it's great, but one scary thing about this election is 70 million people voted for Donald Trump. That's 7 million more than last time. So that means 7 million more people came out to like vote for Donald Trump, and like I don't know if you guys noticed, but like in New York, especially like in New York City, like a decent part of Queens has become very
Yeah.
red.
Yeah.
So like, like there's like a lot of deep-seated like, racism and like probably bigotry like going on in the U.S. right now, and like part of the issue here is that if Biden won, I think part of his job should be to like try to like stop that hate so that we don't have a repeat of Trump again in 2024.
We've become just a very divisive nation over the last 4 years. Bringing unity is one of the number one jobs of the U.S. president. We just have to wait for Biden.
Yeah, hopefully these 4 years he can do that.
His like I don't know, I'm sure there's an actual label for it, but his acceptance speech was very sort of how do I put it? It was very positive in the sense that he didn't actually talk about Trump at all, and his thing was like the short version of it was everyone who didn't vote for me, you're disappointed, but I'm a Democratic candidate, but I'm an American president, and I want to represent all of you. So I'm just hoping that sort of rhetoric is kind of like what we really need to just not be as like at each other's throats about like politics in general.
Yeah.
We all we can do right now is hope. You have
Also,
any? Oh, yeah, go ahead.
oh no, I was just gonna say like on last side note because Rafi mentioned Queens is becoming more like
Yeah.
red.
Yeah, very much.
I think we talked about this briefly, but I just want to bring this up on the podcast because I think it's jokes still. Um, you guys heard about the people in Jackson Heights trying to do Bengalis
Yeah.
for Trump or Muslims for Trump, right? Like
That's the dumbest thing.
that's really funny. Like, cause you can. There's nothing wrong. Okay. Let me rephrase this. You can be whatever political party you believe in, right? Everyone's entitled to their beliefs. But when I see like a screenshot of some Muslim girl being like, I was at a Trump rally and the Trump supporters were yelling at me when I or looked at me funny when I greeted my parents in Arabic, and her second reaction is why? But I'm a Trump supporter with you. It's like, do you not read the room that they specifically hate who you are and what you stand for, and you're speaking in Arabic around these people? Like you are literally the epitome of a villain
I
in
think that
front of
was a
these
TikTok.
people.
I think that was a
It,
TikTok
it
that
was
floating
it was
around.
a screenshot of TikTok. Oh, you're right about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It was a TikTok that was floating around. It's very funny.
She stands
Very
for
funny.
it. They just care what she looks like and what she speaks.
This is true, right? And it's like
She was
Bengalis for
speaking
Trump
ISIS,
is
bro.
like you wanna, yeah, Bengalis for Trump. Woo, these
She was
our own
speaking
people hate
not
us.
English. She was speaking jihadi to them.
Oh.
She was speaking terrorist, is what you
mean,
really
yes.
mean.
Oh yeah.
Exactly.
She was speaking flight risk and random search.
Oh my god. Oh
Okay,
my
before we
god.
swap topics, I just
Yeah.
want to piggyback off of what you said about delegitimizing the media. I remember there was a video on YouTube of a QAnon, no, the Proud Boys rally. Basically, there was an amateur news reporter from a college nearby going to and like trying to cover it, right? And he's not white, so I think he said he was Latino. I forgot what type, but basically when they were there, he started recording, and they were like, "Where are you from? Who are you from? Or who are you?
Who you
On behalf
representing?
of?" Yeah, I guess. And he was like, "I just want to record." And at the end of it, he ended up getting his camera broken, but also they like started pushing him around and then like started beating him. Like he ended up getting stitches, I think. Don't quote me, but he did get fucked up. And yeah, that's what they
It
turned their
is
supporters into.
that is really what this country has become. Like a major part of this country has become just that. I don't know even how to put it. Just
Like, is it? Here's the thing: is that it's like journalists, if they're reporting the facts, right? Like just the pure facts, what comes out of one person's mouth, what comes out of another person's mouth, and the actions that take place in between, right? If those journalists then go on to prove candidate A is lying or candidate B is not being honest about what they're saying, right? It's one thing if you're like, look, that person has opinion that's wrong, or they're misleading someone because of XYZ reasons, but it's like they're genuinely trying to attack the press because the press is questioning their leader.
yeah. again, we can talk about
Yeah, no,
this
we
for
can't
the
spend the
entire
whole episode
podcast.
on this, huh?
Like we could really talk about this for the entire podcast, and we really not going to get any opinions out of anyone outside of just agreeing with everyone here. But
We should incorporate a third party for this. I think we should get a guest star for when we talk about this.
Are you saying we
I
should get a
mean,
Trump supporter on this? Because
No, no, no,
Uh,
no, 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 no.
Do you know any Trump
But
supporters you can
I
get
would
on
be
this?
okay with a conservative. I would
Pratik,
not
are
be
you
okay
a
with
Trump supporter
supporter.
secretly?
Listen to me. Listen to me. Don't say this shit. I'm cutting this out.
I'm saying,
no, save
guys,
it.
if
I'm
I
the
found
editor.
out tomorrow Pratik was
Yeah.
secretly a Trump supporter and
No,
just
I'm
did his
fucking
best to
not.
stay in
Oh
the
my
closet
God.
about that, would we all be that surprised?
Oh my
I-
god, yes you would.
Fuck.
Stop saying this shit, bro.
I'm
But
I'm the
Anyways,
editor.
I
Pratik, would you like to
legitimately
segue?
Okay,
I
yeah, let's.
legitimately mean I would be okay with having a conservative. I would actually want one. Not a Trump supporter though.
I have some ideas, but later podcast.
Okay.
Let's get into the topic of the week. So, so this week we're actually talking about I guess the concept of self-identity and associated identity, just identity in general. And the concept, or at least the way we kind of put it, from a very fundamental view, let's do this mental experiment, right? Teleportation, very interesting. From what I know, at least from the very minimal fucking sci-fi movies that I watch and just any sort of random reading that I do, there's two versions of teleportation or very fast travel that you can really do. One is wormholes, which is bending space-time. And the second is, if we're specifically talking about moving like physical objects, it's destruction and then reconstruction. What that essentially means is you walk into this like pod thing, whatever it essentially is, your entire body is destructed and the atoms that make you up are essentially recorded. At the other end, wherever this may be, like you could say from like Earth to Mars, it could be intergalactic, it doesn't really matter. You are regenerated from bottom to the top of like the very top of your head, right? Every hair on your body is reconstructed. The question now becomes is, are you still the same exact person that you were when you were destroyed? Or are you completely different? There's a bunch of like other experiments that comes with this, or like thought experiments that come with this, but I want to see what everyone's initial thoughts are. What do you guys think?
All right, let's jump in first.
Why don't you go in first?
All right, cool. I just want to make sure because I feel like I've been talking too damn much.
Oh, I said
Alright.
Nikki.
Aha.
You just hear what you want to
So
hear.
you're
huh?
saying you're saying
Hear what you want to hear.
you're saying instead of the guy who thinks he's talking too damn much, the guy who's been talking the entire time is jokes.
No,
Pratik, how about you?
You could go too. I need time to process. I'm dumb.
Okay. I'm
Jimmy,
just gonna
go
jump
ahead.
in real quick since Nikki
Go
and I
ahead,
were the
go
ones who talk about this a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Now, the thing when it comes to teleportation, I'm just like, all right, location A, get to location B immediately, right? The sort of Star Trek beam me up Scotty referencing of like, you stop existing in one spot and you immediately start existing in another. From what I know, there's always a lot of back and forth of are you the same person at that point, right? And I feel like you can argue because you're reconstructed like atom for atom as an identical copy of who you were before, including, at least in my opinion, the most important part being like the neurons in your brain, retaining your memories and personality of who you are, then that sense of identity still carries over, right? So that even if you are entirely vaporized on one spot, but then entirely reconstructed on another, these individual people or bodies are so actually I should rephrase that. These individual bodies are still the exact same person.
Okay. I mean, before we get into like the human aspect of it, which the original like experiment really kind of is, I kind of want to see what everyone thinks about something that's not human, because humanity, or at least being human, we have the concept of consciousness, we have the concept of a soul, like assumed concept of a soul for some people, some not, whatever. I did want to talk about something that's inanimate. For example, the thought experiment, the original one that really where this comes from is the ship of Theseus. Old Socratic, Platonic, I forgot which philosopher actually did it. I should actually look that up. But the ship of Theseus is this concept, is this ship that was built, say, in any time frame. It really doesn't really actually matter. Let's say it was built in the 1500s. This ship is still running today. The reason being is that individual parts that have been broken, for example, a sail, have been either repaired or replaced. Like the mast breaks, you fix it. The sail tears, you fix it or get a new one. This fucking, I don't know what it's called, the steering wheel of the ship breaks, you fix it.
Nice.
At what point? And now it's gotten to the point where every single part has been replaced.
Like
at a
every
certain point.
plank on the ship at one
Yeah.
point or another has been replaced.
Yes, essentially. At what point is the ship not the original ship? Or is it still the original ship? What do you guys think?
Now that could be. I know you don't want to get into the human part of it, but even
Not
if you're
just
talking
yet.
about inanimate objects like a ship, right? It could still be like that sense of identity of the entire time while you're replacing the mast or you're replacing the bow or you're replacing. I'm not a sailor, so there's only so many parts of a ship I'm aware of, right?
Port side.
Well, that okay. Well, man, the
There she
harpoons,
blow.
I guess, right?
There she blow on the port side.
This is the. None of us are sailors out here, right?
Yar har fiddle dee dee.
A pirate's life is not for me.
Jesus.
Go ahead.
Anyways, point being, no matter which part you're replacing, if the entire time, the way I'm thinking of it, the way I'm looking at it, you're thinking the SS Nakib is just getting a new bow or getting a new mast or getting a new plank on this lower deck or whatever it is, right? It's still you're making modifications or improvements or additions or changes, whatever you want to call it, to what is overall still the SS Nakib, right? That sense of identity, in theory, never never diminishes, even though it's being changed, right? And sort of, this might be a weird example, right? So you may have to bear with me here, but this popped up as you were saying it. Any of you guys ever watch RoboCop?
Yeah,
I don't remember it
a
well
long
enough.
time ago.
Okay, I'm gonna give like a 2-second summary because I don't want to get too far into it, right? But the general gist of RoboCop is, you got a cop. I think it's in Detroit for the first movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
He
is.
stops a gang thing. He gets shot to pieces. Literally every part of his body is basically shot off except for his head, right? And then they store the head. Fast forward a couple, whatever. Like there's enough. Fast forward to a point where there's technology
We can
that can
rebuild him.
basically implant his. Yes, exactly that. Right. We can rebuild it. They implant his head onto a cybernetic body, which at that point, literally every part of his body is artificial and recreated, except for I believe his face and his brain, right? And whatever like spinal connection there is going up to his brain, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, this person, I think his name is Alex Murphy, right? The person that used to be, the police officer, the father, he has lost every part of his body and had it reconstructed into a literal walking like robot cop, right? Or RoboCop, title drop, credit roll, right? And the way the movie does it, I feel like is pretty interesting because in the beginning he's got like, he's more computer than he is person, than he is Alex Murphy. And he's got like, whatever cop protocols and he speaks and feels like a robot, so he doesn't feel anything at all. And at that point, I feel like you could say he's lost his identity, right? But then when he gets rid of the programming stuff and he is still Alex Murphy, he has his memories, he has his personality back, but just in a different robot shell, right, inside a different body, that sense of identity is still there. So kind of translating back to the ship of Theseus argument, if that ship is still that ship, but with all new parts and pieces, then that ship never stopped being that ship. I know I said that, and someone listening is gonna hate me for phrasing it the way I did.
Yeah,
For
because
phrasing it that way.
Pratik is confused. Pratik hurt himself with confusion. I mean, the whole concept comes down to there's no answer to this, so it really just what you identify as, what is it called? How you identify it, right? How, Like obviously a ship doesn't self-identify, right?
Are you
Like,
assuming the ship's gender?
fuck, man.
I'm sorry, that's a
assu-
terrible joke.
Yeah, I'm assuming the
Joke to
ship's
me.
fucking name. I don't know. That really comes down to what you really think identity is really comprised of, right? Is it the physical aspects of originality, or is it something different? Is it a sense of being, whether that's yourself, whether that's someone else, or whether that's something else, right? Like if we talk about like humanity, like humans, right? We replace ourselves every, I don't know, every single one of our cells is replaced. I think that it's like 7 years. Maybe I'm wrong. But eventually, like we are obviously not the same people that we were when we were 5 years old, because our brains develop, our bodies grow, blah blah blah. It really, I think for me, it comes down to for each person, it really comes down to how you identify what you are, who you are. Is it every atom in your being, or do you feel like there's something, I don't know, not paranormal, supernatural to who you are? Is there something beyond the cells that make up who you are? Or in any sort of object, any sort of thing, right?
Like
That
some
comes down
sort
to
of
that.
metaphysical sense of
Mm-hmm.
like identity, for lack of a better term. I feel like
Yeah,
I'm
'cause,
repeating that too much.
like, I mean, even just like identity in general is like we define a ship as a ship because humans call it that. Humans make it that, right? It really comes down to the person, in my own eyes. Pratik, Rafi, you guys have been sitting there twiddling your thumbs.
Either
What do
they're
you think?
twiddling their thumbs or their brains have
Oh, don't make
melted,
me
and
laugh.
either one is a fair reaction to this one.
Yeah.
It's just it's hard to wrap your head around because like maybe like it's like to me was saying like the idea of like identity. Like I feel like a lot of what makes who we are is like what people accept us as, right? Like I'm only Rafi because like that's what everyone knows me as, right? Like the idea of the ship is like everyone accepts that the ship is still that ship because you know that's what everyone says its name is, right? Like the SS, like whatever it is, like the ship of Theseus is still the ship of Theseus because everyone's like this is still the ship of Theseus, despite the fact that it has completely different parts from the original ship. So the whole metaphysical thing, maybe there is like something that like does like control like who we are, like say like what we are, like how everyone's personality is different, everyone thinks differently and like acts differently, so like there might be some other part of us that we can't like physically see or study that might also determine who we are in any way, if that makes sense.
Pratik, do you wanna step in here before I share my next thought?
Yes. I think asking if there's something metaphysical that makes us who we are is kind of treading on religion.
Oh yeah,
Because
we're gonna get into religion in a second.
No, but this is interesting. This is actually a new take on this. No, please, please,
We're gonna get into it.
because I was
please
gonna ask you
continue,
guys
Pratik.
in like
Go
a
ahead.
yes or no question. Do you guys think there's something metaphysical making you you?
Yes.
Because Rafi said yes. Nikib
Yes,
said yes
I
to me.
believe so.
So, I want to hear more about your religion angle of this.
Yes,
I
I
want to
am.
say yes, but not
Okay.
because religion. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
All
because
right.
the dumb
Then that,
neurons firing
right.
in my brain
Yeah.
are saying I am me.
I want to get into the religion aspect of it. So, Pratik, I'm gonna segue into that like piece of it
So
like
let
right
Wait,
me.
now.
should we hear what he says first, just in case it's
Do you want
not
to?
related directly to what you're saying or what you're gonna ask?
It's not.
Well, like, yeah.
I was just gonna say that I am atheist and I don't think there's anything
Yeah.
there. I think we're just a product of circumstance.
That's a valid what is it called, point of view. The reason why we're actually eventually going to get into this is because so far we've talked about barely about the human aspect of it, and then a little bit about the ship of Theseus, which is not really human aspect of it. There's one idea that differentiates like human beings from in this concept from the ship of Theseus. There's one thing that we have failed to really understand properly as a species as a whole. It's our consciousness. We think, therefore we are, right? That whole concept of we are different from literally every single being that we have so far met because we understand that we are our individuals and we understand that other things are also individuals, right? Consciousness is so difficult to understand. And that's why I really want to get in. That's how I'm segueing this into eventually religion. Do you think if you're reconstructed, your consciousness stays intact, right? In my own opinion, there's two ways to go about it. There's what Timid said about at the very fundamental level, every single human brain is just like binary. It's either a neuron is firing or a neuron is not firing, right? And that all of those neurons either firing or not firing become, you can think of it if we go into like computers where it's logic gates and there's relays and there's so many other things that develop into what we have as our mind today. Do you guys think that consciousness is completely physical, completely made up of just neurons, or is there something behind that as well that we will never really will see? Because maybe technology advances to the point where you could copy your brain into a computer and see if it actually works. What do you guys think?
Now, for lack of a better term, or I guess just because I think, like, you haven't said this, but I think this might be what you're asking about. It is sort of the question of, like a soul. Can a soul be replicated, or are we special because we have a soul with other creations, constructs don't?
Well, my whole concept is because what differentiates us is the idea of consciousness. Is consciousness purely the human development of years of evolution, or is there something behind that? Do you guys think there's something behind that as well? So yeah, like, is the soul a part of you? Do you believe that your consciousness is purely physical, or is there something else to it?
Thing is, I'm bringing up the concept of a soul because, like, I know that is like a thing that people talk about when it comes to not like religion per se, but like a sense of spirituality, right? The idea that, like, everyone's soul is unique, and it's something that, in as a concept in general, is unique to people. Thing is, unfortunately, I'm gonna have to give a boring answer of, I am not very much, or not even very much, I'm not really a believer in that principle. I said this before, but I very much think it's just neurons and synapses are firing in ways that make my brain be able to think, retain memories. Those memories and those thoughts are my personality, and from those mixes of electrical discharges and chemical, like, reactions is who I am as a person, right? For all of my strengths, weaknesses, flaws, all the things people like or get really annoyed by about me, right? But, like, I also do still see the argument that some people would have where, if you do something like try to destroy and then reconstruct, or try to replace something entirely, it loses the soul of what it is.
Okay. Take Rafi, any opinions?
So I think consciousness is a physical process, and it's not because I just Googled it. No, but like,
Nice.
also we have like 100 billion neurons, right? I think 100% of everything that we've ever thought can be explained by this.
Okay.
Just like different fucking way. I mean, I'm dumb, but I think it can be explained by this, just not by me.
Rafi, and then I'll say something.
So, there's definitely a physical aspect of it because, like, I do believe in the idea that, like, our brains definitely like fire the neurons and everything to like help us, like, that makes us like experience what we're seeing and, like, give us the feedback of what we're seeing and what we're feeling and all that. But, like, I do think there's still something behind that has to control it in some way. I'm not sure, like, what it is, because this is, a weird topic I never really thought about before, but, like, there has to be something that, like, kickstarted in the first place that's, like, controlling it in some way, like the jump start to it. I don't know
like
I guess
like
that's the best way to
the
describe it, right? The jump start. The spark.
The spark.
the special sauce that makes us spark.
You know, like the
Chemical X.
like the little flame inside of us. You know, like there's.
Mm.
I feel like there's something there that like starts it off.
Mm-hmm. I really like fundamentally, like, again, like what I said before is we really do come down to neurons firing or not firing, right? And that will control chemical reactions and really become who we are. I agree with Rafi in that there must be something, at least in my own head, is there must be something behind it. And this really does dive into religion purely because I'd rather believe in something rather than believe in nothing. But there's also, like, with the concept of, like, a soul, it is also kind of not, it kind of falls off when I ask this next question. Is, for example, an ape, right? A monkey, a gorilla, whatever it is, really, intelligent being. They have been shown to understand themselves. They have been shown to understand speech, understand use of tools. Are they at a different level of consciousness than we are? And at the same time, humans that suffer from dementia, are they also at a lower level of consciousness where they've lost it because of dementia, because of like brain hemorrhaging or whatever like mental issues that you can suffer from dementia, right? That's kind of the next question I want to ask before Tamid we jump into that last topic. Are there different levels? And in my head, I feel like that's an argument to the whole soul conversation. Is because if there's different levels, is the soul, like, behind it just, like, trapped? Is someone just trapped in their body? Or is someone legitimately not understanding who they are anymore because of dementia? Or an ape slowly starting to develop their understanding of themselves and become fully conscious? Or at least what our version of conscious is.
I'll be honest, the dementia and soul question is something that I have never properly thought about, because now it seems like it seems almost daunting slash terrifying to think, like, I mean, dementia as a condition is always something that's uh fearful for me to think of, right? The idea that when you hit a certain age, or if you have a disease like Alzheimer's, that your mind can decay to where you forget like the memories, the people, the places that are most important to you, or lose bits of your personality. But the idea that someone who has dementia is either losing their soul or their soul is trapped inside, I'll be honest, that's something that, just the way you phrase that, like, gave me like a second of like self what's the word? Like
What?
self reflection
Yeah.
of like, holy shit, that perspective or that visualization of it is genuinely terrifying.
I mean, because, like, you will never experience what a person who with dementia experiences unless you have it, right? Do you, like, a person that's so far gone? Are they just a? Unfortunately, I don't want to put this bluntly, but I feel like I have to. Essentially, a shell,
Hmm.
right? Like an engine, like a machine that's just running to keep itself alive. At a certain point, are you not who you are anymore because of mental decay?
I mean,
Yeah.
I do want to give a quick disclaimer before we do continue this, that I think I mentioned this episode 1, but none of us are doctors, right? So our understanding of dementia is very surface level, and
Yeah.
or no higher than
Yeah.
like us googling how dementia works and the specificities of it,
Yeah.
like just a little before the podcast.
Yeah. Like I
But
don't want to
the
like
oh,
the
go on,
over. I
continue.
just straight up just the overall idea of it doesn't, like, dementia is just like like an umbrella term that we're all
Hmm.
using, but just the idea of mental decay,
Right.
just that purely mental decay, and someone that's so far gone are like when their body is literally functioning purely to survive.
When you phrase it like that, I can totally see how it is just seen as like, this person is just existing until their body sort of gives out on them, or their mind gives out entirely, whichever one comes first. But like, and this kind of goes back to, again, we're not doctors, but if it was possible to repair or mend that damage, then like that person could still be themselves, right? That sense of identity, that sense of them having a soul could still be there.
Pratik?
So I kind of want to throw in that, like Timid said, we are just Googling stuff, and while I was Googling stuff, I found out that some of the smarter animals that we talk about, like chimpanzees and dolphins, they have so a chimpanzee has 3.7 billion neurons, so and a dolphin has 37 billion neurons. Um, I don't know if we can actually tell from that number if the dolphin is smarter than the chimpanzee, but I also did a little bit more Googling and found out that Alzheimer's patients, they usually what happens is as they go through it, neurons get destroyed and their connections start sucking in the hippocampus and the entorhinal cortex. So if I were to take a stance on whether or not they have a lower level of consciousness, I would say yes. Even though that makes me sound kind of like a cunt.
But you're saying that, okay, I understand what you're saying. You sound like a cunt, but like from a purely like number standpoint, you're saying that because their neurons are decaying.
Yeah.
Rafi, do you have something you want to share?
So I guess it's weird, but like I've always like thought like especially like cars, like machines are very similar to humans in the sense that they take in like fuel, like we take food and we use that energy to like do our things. Cars, they take gas and they use that to like move around and stuff, right? And cars, they can still run if their pistons, if some of their pistons aren't working properly. They won't run as well as they used to, but they can still run and do what they need to do until eventually they just die off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I see it is like people like with neurons like slowly decaying, like it's like it's just like any other machine where it's just like slowly shutting down and like there's really nothing you can do about it. Like maybe if there was maybe with medical advancement, maybe there'd be ways to like fix those neurons and like make the brain function like it used to. But I feel like it's just the body slowly decaying and there's really nothing to do about that because that's just what happens when you get older. It's just something you can't really avoid.
So the reason I brought this all up was because of that argument or that perception of human consciousness is the like what I see as the arguments against like a soul. You know what I'm saying? Is like because if there is a soul and then you're trapped in your own body, that is a terrifying thought. Um, and but here's the reverse, literally the reverse end, right? This entire time I've been talking about like mental decay. What about growth? You know, when we're kids, we really generally don't remember a lot of stuff until we're like 4, 5 years old. Maybe some people start remembering like have hazy memories up until they're like 7, 8. Like me, I have like random memories from when I was 3, but then like there's a big part of my life that I just don't remember. At what point are you actually conscious? Is memory tied to it? Is you just identifying that you are your own person, or does memory play a big part? Because I don't remember when one day I woke up and I'm like, yeah, I'm me and I'm going to school and I like this and I hate that, like I don't remember that. Is there a point? Do you guys think there's a point in your own development of any sort of intelligence where consciousness kind of just clicks? Like it just snaps and something happens where all of a sudden you're conscious.
Now, when it comes to consciousness, right? Like, I wish I could remember this better, which I guess is pretty apt for this conversation because we're talking about people losing memories. But there was a thing I remember talking about or hearing about that was like, the only thing that really separates us from, let's say, like the examples you gave, like of chimpanzees or like monkeys, is that sense of consciousness, right? Now, as far as what that difference is or what that point is it sort of like an internal voice that you can actually like
Aye.
be able to talk and be self-aware of, right? The idea that I'm doing this thing. This thing has an effect on other things, right? Like not just sort of like a not just on a survival need, right? That like, hey, what do I need to get my food and eat and procreate and move on? But sort of like, what do I want slash like, what does Tamid like, right? Like the big defining thing of like at what point does consciousness actually start to kick in is like that sense of self-awareness of I am me, I am an individual from like you or someone else, right? Like if I look myself in the mirror, I can recognize that's not another person wearing identical clothing and similar skin color. That is me right there, and I can identify myself.
A lot of people argue that the voice in your head is your conscious. Like, well, like, we say like, oh, I have a conscious, blah blah blah. Like, I can hear myself in the head. But a lot of people legitimately like think that that voice, once you develop that voice, is when you become fully conscious,
Mhm.
or our perception of conscious. If I'm being completely PC.
No, that does make a
Uh,
lot of sense, but it's like it's just one of those things where maybe we're limited by our technology, but if it was possible to hear that voice in another person's head, right?
mm, mm,
I wonder, and this kind of going back to your question, I wonder how far back you can go, right? How young of a person you can be to hear that voice inside of a child's head, right? Like if you take a 20-year-old, you'll definitely hear that voice. You take a 7-year-old, you'll still definitely hear that voice,
mhm.
right? You go to 3, 4, you'll probably hear that voice most likely, I want to say, right? 1, 2, will you and 1, 2, I want to start asking like, will you hear that voice? Or is the issue you don't understand that voice because that voice doesn't actually know all the words it needs to communicate? Right? Kind
Mhm.
of like how a baby babbles.
Where it's just like instinct and desire and need, right?
Right, right. So like cuz you know how like children children aren't born necessarily with an innate sense of language in the sense like okay, actually let me rephrase that. Children aren't born with an innate sense of communication, right?
Well, like our
You
version of
said they
communication
aren't?
through like speech. Their like communication
Like
is
when I
different.
say that, I want to be very particular about what I'm saying. Like children understand how to like communicate, but they're not born with the knowledge of the English language type of thing.
Well, yeah. I feel like what you're trying to, or like what I'm getting at is, or like what I'm understanding from you is that the communication skills that babies have as soon as they're born are instinctual, and we react to them because of our instincts as well, or of our fundamental instincts of like life and death, right? Like a baby cries, you want the thing to shut up, so you try. Okay, let's feed it,
Do we
right?
feed it? Do we change the diaper?
Right.
Right. So what I'm getting at is if you could hear that baby's like inner monologue, inner voice, right? Hear their conscience, right? At what point do they start trying to internally babble, right?
Yeah.
You know, when babies babble, they are actually trying to communicate because they're mimicking what you do, right?
Mm.
What we do using our mouths and actually making like cohesive words and sentences, right? So
For the
at
most
what
part, and then we
point,
have critique.
right? I don't even know where that one came from,
I
but
don't know. I just
sure.
wanted to throw a jab out. I just wanted to throw a jab
um,
out.
But point
God
being, like,
damn it.
at what point does a baby's inner conscience go from being an instinctual or instinctive, like, thought process to actually trying to cohesively word, like, thoughts together, even if it is still internal babbling, right? And then as they learn English, that babbling becomes actual, like, thoughts.
Maybe part of an answer for part of your question. So I googled something. It's from sciencemag.org. Unfortunately, I don't see the study listed, but it does list cognitive neuroscientist Sid Koudner from CNRS, the French National Research Agency. They found that they can see that babies display glimmers of consciousness and memory from as old as 5, and they're operationalizing consciousness and memory as like holding on to the image of something. Um, Basically, they just look for a spike in brain activity when the baby senses something, and it sends another late wave. And apparently, it can take 1/3 of a second, but that's what they're looking for, and that's what they're considering consciousness slash memory.
That's interesting. Now, quick
Yeah,
question, just for clarity.
I'm not gonna have
You
this
said
answer.
that. No, no, that's fine. That's fine. I just want to ask it regardless. You said it's for babies. So when you say as old as 5, do you mean 5 months or?
Oh, I thought I said 5 months. My bad.
Oh, so it is for like 5-month-old babies. You're saying that the scientists recorded brainwave activity that they're
That is
attributing to be
similar
like.
to adult brain activity. Yeah,
Nah, that's pretty interesting.
Mm.
I
I,
didn't
I'm
actually know
gonna
that.
I'm gonna
I
link
mean,
it for you guys.
these these developments happen every like are still like happening. Like this is research that people are interested in. Uh, the entire the entirety of human society is pretty much interested in the concept of who we are, even though it's not in the limelight most of the time. But you know, if something ever does get developed, it's bound to gain the public eye. Ruffy, you have anything?
Uh, I mean, not really. Like it's just
That's
like
understandable.
the idea of like baby consciousness. I know like babies they don't see the world like we see the world. Like I saw like a thing where like if you like the reason why babies like peekaboo so much is because they legitimately think that you're disappearing into thin air when you cover your face with your hands.
Oh,
It's
object
interesting.
permanence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Object
Right,
permanence
right.
is developed.
So it's
I
like
was
they think,
actually.
oh, you're
Oh,
just
you
appearing
continue.
and, and disappearing and appearing out of nowhere, and that's why they like enjoy it so much.
I was actually. It's funny you bring that up because as Pratik was talking about it, I was actually just thinking like I don't know. I don't. It's been a while. Like this is going way back into like freshman year of college when you like Psych 101. You start learning like what mental things humans start to develop over to like their like life cycle, right? But I was just wondering like at 5 months or so, is that when babies start to develop stuff like object permanence or other principles that are related to like maturing, right?
I think it's
Because after a while, kids start to get less amused by peekaboo because they know, hey, asshole, you're still there. I know you're there.
Why is that
But sorry,
funny?
fatigue. You're saying.
I think when kids develop object permanence. It's about 8 months old.
Oh, so according to that study that you linked, then they could have more or something like similar to conscious thoughts prior to actually developing object
Object
permanence.
permanence. Yeah. I mean, well, that makes sense because let's say you're like really, really fucking dumb, right? If there's a clear threat to you, you're and you're scared, which babies obviously show when they cry. I would you count that as consciousness? Because they're reacting to something that's a threat, and they're
Be
like, they would
instinctive, or that
cry,
could be argued
maybe
as
go to their
instinctive.
mom. What?
I mean, yeah, that could be argued as
That could be, yeah.
instinctive. As
Instinctive.
to me, as to me, it said it. Um, there's one last concept before we move on to the last, the last topic essentially of the podcast. That I want to talk about in consciousness. It also kind of moves into the next one as well. Has everyone watched Westworld? I know Tamid hasn't watched Westworld.
I have not.
No.
I am guilty.
So
I
Tamid and
watched
Pratik.
Westworld.
So me and Rafi have watched Westworld. I'm gonna keep it as like, I don't know, like conceptual as possible. But the whole concept of Westworld is androids, not androids. Androids? Is that the right word?
I think they're androids.
They're
Hosts.
androids,
Well,
right?
they're called hosts, but
They're
like they're
hosts.
basically
Okay,
androids.
they're robots that look like humans, right? That they were developed in the public eye as essentially toys at an
Japanese sex
amusement park.
toys. Oh, I
I mean,
knew
yeah,
it.
they're sex and murder toys. For rich people and at an amusement park.
Okay.
But behind the scenes, they have been developed to develop their own consciousness. And the way it's done is various different steps that involve memory and retaining their memories. A big part of it is retaining memories, Rafi, right? Like if I'm
Yeah.
remembering correctly, a big part of it is retaining memories.
Yeah, retaining memories and like emotion, I think.
Yeah, emotion, memories, right? Like that's why I asked the question about developing consciousness is at what point, like, because we don't remember things, right? Like I really want to like dive into the topic of memory and how that like deals with consciousness. At what point do you start remembering everything? Because I think a lot of it we develop because of what we remember. We develop because of our past experiences. We develop because of the mistakes that we make. At what point is those memories define you? At what point do you like really? Do you guys think that your memories have a big part of your consciousness? Because I legitimately think so. Because I don't think that I was fully conscious, like legitimately conscious, until I could
Your memory kicked
actively
in?
understand myself. What?
Until your memory kicked in?
Yeah, like until I legitimately started remembering, like, oh, this happened last week. This
Yeah.
happened, last month. This is what I ate for breakfast. Like those are very basic things, but
Yeah, so
when
my
you fully
problem
understand your memory.
Yeah, so my problem with that is even though, right now you're what, 23? You're in your 20s, right?
Oh, bro, I'm younger than that. What the
You're
fuck?
you are in your 20s, yes.
I'm not even 22.
You're in your
All right.
20s.
Well,
That's in
you
your
say that
fucking
you're also
20s.
like a week away
Oh
from
my
being
god.
22.
Anyway, so you're in your 20s. Even now, you have issues remembering things that you did like a couple days ago because memory is such shit. Like recall is really bad for humans. I mean, no, we're great, but like if you want to make it okay, no, if you think that just memories and understanding your memories and being able to use that as who you are, I think that's like wrong because people can get memories embedded in them really easily. They did a lot of studies on that, and like there's a
Oh yeah,
YouTube video I can link, but like
that's very much true. I mean,
maybe
like
I misunderstood your point.
no. Yes, I understand. Like our memories, or at least our like recollection is not great. But I'm talking about what defines your own self, or what defines yourself. It's not like just fundamental what you remember, but it's the understanding of your own memory. What I mean by that is, for example, like, have you guys ever like looked into how photographic memory really works?
Is it okay for that one specifically? I don't know if this is how photographic memory works in general,
Mhm.
but my understanding of it is something about like having like a, and you can completely correct me if I'm wrong about this, but having some sort of like mind castle where you place down an
Oh,
object and you remember entirely for what it is.
that's to develop your own memory. That's to
Ooh,
develop. But
okay,
people
never mind.
who are like naturally like quote unquote photographic, at least I'm from the most general sense, and from the people that are like you kind of see on TV, or like hear in books and stuff like that. It's this concept that they can't remember, like oh, they read a book and they remember every single page. What they kind of keep, and it's kind of like they've developed a memory castle without actually developing a memory castle, with like consciously developing one. It's the idea of like, if you give them a day, they have an idea of what they've done throughout that day. Like that's the type of photographic memory that's like generally more popular, like in terms of like how many, it's more common, I guess is the best word. Is you give them a day and they can remember what happened on that day. Like you can say March 16th, 2017, and be like, oh, I had like bacon and eggs for breakfast. I went to dinner with my friends. Like that's what they remember. Um, they don't, at least like in the general sense, I don't think it's ever determined that they have a better IQ than anyone else, or they're at a fucking next level
Like
Siddhartha
next level
Gautama, like
intelligence.
Siddhartha Gautama, like spiritual being. You know what I'm saying? It's nothing like that. Uh,
You really
it,
name dropped quite the name right there. Is that
I
the
named Buddha.
Indian
That's Buddha.
philosopher?
No, that's just Buddha.
Oh, that is Buddha. Oh, never
That's just
mind.
Buddha. Yeah, right. It's nothing like that. So like that's what I mean by how consciousness is tied to your memory, is your understanding of your own memory. Like obviously I don't remember everything, but I remember the things that really have affected me, or at least define who I am. Whether that's good events, bad events, it doesn't really matter. That's what I'm kind of trying to get at,
Like
Pratik, if that makes sense.
experience.
Yeah,
Experience. Okay.
experience. There we go. That's the right word. So how much does experience, I guess,
Experience.
right? I mean, the thing is, experience is whole like two different things, right? There's instinctual as well, like animals that jump into a river that's too deep, probably not going to jump into a river again if they have the chance, right? Not like that
I agree
type
with
of
you.
experience, right?
Yeah, I
Like,
agree with you.
no,
Like I think it goes back to the point that I made before. We're all just a product of our circumstances.
I
So
mean, we
then,
can
in that case,
define
when
the
it comes to
circumstances.
circumstances, right? It's not so. So, like what you said before, about Pratik, about memories. Like, it's not that it's not that we're expected to remember everything, right? Because like you said, memories are pretty shit, right? We'll forget a lot of things. I definitely know
Not how
I've
to
been
do
guilty
seven
about
Oh, I
forgetting
forget a lot of
a
things too.
whole lot more than I should be, right? Like, every now and then I just wonder, like, is the dementia hitting early, or is it just
No.
my memory's always been a little
Chill,
mediocre?
chill. That shit is
Right.
serious.
Bro, you.
No, you're right. I
are-
can't be joking about that, but it's just
yeah,
like
you.
every now I'm just like, no, like I'm not even gonna joke. Like I write down a lot of things because I don't want to forget it, right?
Mhm.
But besides that, getting back to the topic, I guess it is less about the memory per se. When you say experience, I feel like a big part of the experience is sort of your own feelings that from that memory, right? Like that's something that you'll hold with you more than the specifics of that memory, right? So like
Mhm.
what I mean by that specifically is like if we take something really simple, and of course this can be applied to more like complicated memories, but like something as simple as you put your hand on a stove for a second, right? And you like kind of burned your hand for a second, you felt that sensation of pain, you pulled it away. Even if you don't remember how bad the burn was when you put your hand on a stove, you remember that sensation of, I didn't like that a lot. I really didn't like that. I'm not gonna do that, right? Like that's kind of like I feel like it's the feelings that play a big role in your experience of it that makes up who you are.
I know what you mean, but I think for this hot stove thing, I think that's your subconscious or your autonomic system. Like you can't process a thought quick enough to react. It's just like an automatic reaction.
Okay, you
But
know what?
I do get what you
You're
mean.
right about that. You're right about that
I do
being
get
more
what you mean.
instinctive.
How
But I
about
think like
something more emotional?
a really simple example that isn't like an instinctive like self-preservation reflex would be something as simple as like if Nikib gave you a box to open and said, I don't know what's in it, it might be cool, it might suck ass, and you opened it and you literally just found a clay brick in there, and you just had a feeling of, I couldn't be more underwhelmed right now, right? In 10 years from now, if Nikib gives you a box and says, I don't know what could be in it, could be cool, could be shit, you probably won't remember it's a brick in there. But you might, at least in my opinion, you'll be more likely to remember. I remember you give me his box and being really disappointed about it. Am I
Am I
gonna be
just
disappointed again?
am I just Schrodinger's catting everyone? Like what the fuck's going on?
Right, but like,
Hey,
yeah. Something as dumb as that. Like point being, like that feeling of disappointment is what is the part of the experience that you'll keep with you, even if you forget. This dumbass gave me a brick.
I promise that I won't go through the effort to get you a brick.
No, I know you'll get me
Be
an
a
empty
lot
box,
less
and
effort.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll be sitting there. I
Boxes,
already know. You
boxes.
just sit there. I'd open the box. I'd look at you. You die laughing. I just look at you and be like, "That was this funny? You're still
I mean,
laughing?"
funny.
but the
That
thing
is
is,
kind of funny.
you'd expect nothing less. You'd
I
expect
mean, if
nothing
I've
less
learned
from me.
anything, and this is something I sometimes I really live by, is promise nothing, deliver less.
Bro, I'm gonna make sure you get that tattooed on your body. I swear to God, it's gonna go somewhere and you'll never forget.
It's gonna go right above his belt line.
Oh
Oh,
God,
yeah.
like a tramp stamp?
Like
No,
a
no,
front
no.
tramp
In
stamp.
the front.
Front
In
trim
the
stamp.
front tramp stamp.
Is there a name for that? Because tramp stamp is already like such a
Reverse
negative
tramp stamp.
connotation.
I don't know. Elephant's
Reverse
forehead.
stamp.
No
Reverse tramp
part
stamp.
of this sounds good.
I think
For
to me
oh
would
no,
definitely get it on his ass. So
my
other
ass, really?
because the thing is other
Don't
people
you
could
think
see it
I would get it like?
on your
Don't you
forehead.
think I'd get it on like my arm or something so I can
I
be
don't. I
like,
hope not.
"Hey girl, let me flex these guns. Never mind, disappointment commence."
Wait. So if it's promise nothing, deliver less, it has to be like
Wait, I
somewhere
can
people can
do
see. No,
left
it has to
arm
be,
and then right arm.
no, it has to be somewhere where people see it, because when it all comes off, then's when you deliver less. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, I
You get what I'm
understand where
going
you're
with this?
coming from. No, but that means it would be like right above like my pelvis.
Like you could put it on there like your hand.
So then a
right there.
reverse tramp stamp would actually make sense at that point,
Yep.
because then it's like when you open a container, it's like a warning label.
Yeah.
Promise nothing, deliver less.
Yeah, so it has to be
Right?
somewhere where people could see
Beware of contents.
it. People could see it, but then when what's underneath is the delivering less.
So, anyways, I like
Stop
okay.
talking about
For
these guys.
reference, I have for anyone listening and who isn't like a friend or
Good friend
family
of
member
me.
of mine, right?
The Brazilian.
Um, Hey, we do have one Brazilian out there who
Brasil!
listens to us,
Well,
and
it
I
could be
want to
fake.
shout you out to being a really cool guy or gal, or
Could be
however
fake.
you identify, for being in Brazil and listening to 4 random guys in New York.
It's definitely our friend Tanjum just using a VPN to listen to our podcast. But hey, yo, Brazil,
We are officially international.
Mr.
Mr.
Worldwide. We are Mr. Worldwide. I don't care if it's fake or not.
In Portuguese, Brazilian Portuguese, thanks is obrigado. Obrigado. That's how it says it on Google.
Why do you sound like Dora? But
That's how it says
Portuguese?
it. I'm just
Obrigado.
making sure all the
Obrigado.
accents are there. I don't know if it's like Chinese or not. I have
Okay.
never looked at Portuguese.
Obrigado.
You're getting like Italian. Obrigado.
She says it like obrigado.
Oh my God.
I'm not even joking. Whatever, man.
We
Let's
have
just move
really
on.
Stop
Thanks,
talking
man.
about
Thanks,
anything.
Brazilian Dungeon.
We've really stopped talking about.
Hope it's
what
not
we really
Tanjim
wanna
and
talk
just a VPN.
That'd be cool,
Could
though.
be. It could be. What were we talking about?
Where are we?
Where
I'll
are
be
we?
honest, I had a point. I think I made half the point, and I don't remember the other
How
end
did
of
you
that
get to
point.
promise nothing, deliver less? How did you get?
This is a good. Oh man.
Oh, fuck.
This is the decay, isn't it?
Fuck it.
All right, so
Fuck
this is
it.
the podcast for this week.
No.
If you've made it this far, thank you for sticking along. Are we actually are we
I
good
mean,
with this or?
We have another topic.
We do
if
have
we want to talk
cloning.
about it. Yeah,
That-
I feel
is
like
that-
this is the best place to do it. When are
Yeah,
we
we
ever
can
going to
do
talk about duplication, reconstruction, consciousness?
All right,
like this?
sure.
Yeah, let's
So
finish.
in that case, we'll do a hard segue. Nikki, would you like to segue?
Yes, I will segue. We're gonna talk about cloning. Okay,
That's
no.
a bad segue.
I got put on the spot, man.
No, let me tag in for a second. I wanted to ask only because I wasn't sure if you had something premeditated. Clearly you don't, but that's okay. So when it comes to talking about souls,
Was
right?
that a jab?
It's-
Okay.
No, it wasn't. This is all with love and care.
That sounded
please.
like a fucking jab, bro.
Didn't sound like it.
Yeah, I'm just gonna mute his entire.
I'm
voice.
down. I'm muting him right now.
Anyways.
Anyway, Nikki, let's go.
Okay, wait. Here's the thing: is
Alright,
you
go
can mute me, but our wonderful listeners are still gonna hear me, so can't stop, won't
No,
stop.
no. I have your. I
Not
have
on the
your audio
fucking
file.
highlights.
I have your audio file.
Anyways, so when it comes to talking about souls, a lot of things that come into play is like, all right, can the soul really be like transferred over when you're talking about the reconstruction aspect of it? And that also applies to the ship of Theseus aspect of it, where if you are as a percentage of your being almost entirely replaced, is your soul still with you, right? Especially if you're talking about the RoboCop example, right? Now, the place where it gets really controversial and or hefty is when you're talking about clones, right? Because in all of the examples we've talked about before, the individual never stopped being an individual. One person teleporting from one place to another, from location A to location B, stopped existing at location A and resumed existing at location B. In the ship of Theseus example, the ship never stopped being a ship, or more importantly, that there were never more than one ship, right? The ship was a ship the entire time. Whatever changes happened to it along the way were simply modifications to the overarching individual that is that ship, right? But where it gets really controversial and where I want to open up the floor of discussion is when you're cloning and you as an individual, right? Let's just say individual A still exist with your soul intact, with your memories, your personality, is a exact clone of you with the exact same neurons reconstructed atom for atom. Does that clone still have a soul? Or in a less metaphysical, spiritual sense, is that clone its own individual? Or is that just you part 2?
Clarifying
Oh,
question.
I have an interesting addition to the ship of Theseus if we're talking about cloning or two beings, right? For example, with the ship of Theseus, we have a whole brand new ship. What if the original parts of the ship were kept and then reconstructed into the original ship that is broken, battered, whatever you really want to call it? Is the ship that is made from the original parts the original ship of Theseus, or is the new one the ship of Theseus?
Okay, I'm just gonna jump in very briefly for a second here. If our listeners didn't already hate me for how I worded things,
Yeah.
I got lost in what you said.
Okay,
Oh
okay.
no, I got it.
So I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
I got it. I got it.
Yo, okay, you're
I'm
just retarded,
I'm
bro.
the last one to the party here. I am so sorry. Wait, so the ship is battered and the original parts are kept?
No. So the ship, so there's a new ship, right? It's working completely fine. That's the brand new one because it's been replaced over the years. The original parts that were battered and destroyed, they're kept and then eventually reconstructed, and then you have the original ship as well, like the actual original ship.
So you're saying ship A, which is
Yes.
the original ship of Theseus, got all of its modifications to the point where 100% of its components had been swapped out.
Mm-hmm.
And the ship A still remained ship A for the entire duration of its lifetime. And then somewhere in its lifetime, ship B was then created with all of the parts that were swapped out of ship A.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
So which one's which?
Jesus
Are they
Christ. I
both?
asked a question and
Oh.
this one is even more mind-boggling.
I mean,
Okay.
it's kind of the same concept.
It
Wait,
is.
I liked your
It
question.
is. What's up?
I liked your question. Hold on to it,
Yeah.
because I don't remember it.
I
But-
barely remember my question now. 100% of my brain power has gone to this. But I'm gonna, if it's okay with you guys, I want to jump in really briefly.
Yeah.
Because the way you phrased your question, the answer that's coming to my mind is the opposite of the question I was asking. Right? And I'm actually gonna type out my question in a second just so I don't
Yeah.
forget it. But what I want to answer is, if the ship of Theseus has been has been modified to the point where it's 100% new parts, and a new ship is made with all of the components of the ship of Theseus, that second ship is a new ship. Even if it
Mm.
looks like the ship of Theseus, even if it sails like the ship of Theseus, even if you name it Theseus, right? Even though that's actually not how this name works, but even
Yeah.
if you give it to Theseus and it becomes the ship of Theseus, right? It's still a different ship.
Yeah, I mean that's like it's it's hard to wrap your head around, right?
But
Because
can I put my input?
technically, what's up?
I think every time you make an adjustment to the ship of Theseus, I
Mhm.
think that's a different version. And I think the first version where no replacements were made, no adjustments at all, I think that's the original. I think
Mhm.
the final one, once everything is replaced, I think that's the active version.
Oh,
I
you're
mean,
right about that, but I
yeah.
think what Nikib's asking isn't just is it a new version? He's asking, is that a new ship altogether?
Was
Like,
that a
is
new
that a
ship?
new ship?
Or is that the
Like,
original?
can you call that the ship of Theseus, the new one
Yes.
that was made, right?
Well,
If it's
like,
used for the same purpose, yeah.
well, so like, I mean, the
Ooh,
thing is, so the whole reason that like what I'm essentially getting at is there's two ships. There's one that's completely brand new, but like obviously all the parts are like the same, planks, sails. But the original ship, that has been made from the original parts, are the ones that have been replaced. Are the pieces that have been replaced, right? That's the one that's battered, that's bruised, right? That doesn't really work. Like, obviously, doesn't work because those parts have been replaced. But those pieces are the original ones. It's like for example, let's say like you have like a Lego castle, right? And the Lego castle, like you essentially you've got new parts for it. It looks the exact same way, as like that you built it when you were 5, right? But you've been replacing pieces, right? It's literally the same concept. Now with the pieces that you've been replacing, you make that original castle all over again. Which one's the original castle?
I think the first version
Mm.
of it, before any changes, is the original castle. But I think you could call all the versions with each little adjustment. I think they're all. You can call them all the ship of Theseus or the fucking Lego
yeah.
shit you made.
Okay, well, why don't we actually get into the topic of cloning, right? Like, now we bring into the human aspect of it. If there's a duplication of you, at the very fundamental sense, who is the original? How would you know who's the original? Right? If there's a clone, like physical clone of you, 1-to-1, who is the original? Or are you both really the original? Rafi wrote down twice from My Hero, and I really like that. So Rafi, I'm gonna let you take the floor here.
Oh, okay. So, I guess to explain who Twice is a villain in My Hero Academia. Basically, his superpower is that he can clone anything, a person, animal, thing. Like he can clone anything, and it'll be like an exact copy of that person. It'll even like if he's cloning a person, it'll even copy their powers and use their powers, right? But these clones are pretty weak in the sense that if they take a big beating, they'll just melt down into a puddle. Um, and with Twice, like he basically used his clones. He made clones of himself to basically just do his chores because he's really lazy. But his clones are also really lazy. So they rebelled against him, tied him up, beat him in the head, and they started beating each other because they were like, who is the original Twice? And they just kept on beating each other until they all melted to a puddle, and Twice was just sitting there watching his clones kill each other. And it traumatized him so much to the point where he has to like keep his face covered because he's no longer sure whether or not he's the original Twice anymore.
Sounds like a Mr. Meeseeks moment.
Yeah,
But Mr.
kinda.
Meeseeks was like also like I was gonna write down Mr. Meeseeks, but Mr. Meeseeks doesn't make sense because the whole point of why they went crazy is not because they were like arguing whoever was the original. It was arguing because they couldn't get the task done, and they were just like immortal essentially, right? Like they just wanted to die.
Wasn't
just
their
wanted to die.
existence a suffering until they could kill themselves by finishing a task?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Their entire end goal was to like
It's been a
finish a
minute
task.
since I've seen that.
Yeah, it's been a long time, and Rick and Morty's kind of died off a little bit. But yeah, that's why I didn't really write down Mr. Meeseeks because it doesn't really help because each Meeseek is technically unique because each Meeseek comes in and they have a different perspective and they're entirely new Mr. Meeseek.
Now going
Like-
back to Twice first. Oh, sorry. I don't want to cut you off here.
No. I was just literally gonna say like it's like Mr. Meeseeks are like it's like a species. Like if I'm literally gonna nerd out, in my head, Mr. Meeseeks is like a species, and you're just making more of them. It's like having 3 cats, not
Right.
3 of the same cat.
Yeah, I guess.
Go ahead.
But sorry, Rafi.
But like basically the idea of Twice is that he's so traumatized about like him watching his clones kill each other that he's no longer sure whether or not he's the original Twice or if he's just a clone that survived the fight,
Massacre.
right? So like his whole thing is that he has to keep his face covered up because if he uncovers his face, he just starts making clones of himself uncontrollably, and he also has like a split personality as a result of this too.
Very
So-
dark for my hero.
Yeah.
Dark. But it does bring up a really valid thing of sort of arguing about what's real, right? And the way I want to get into that is like, or the reason why I want to bring that up is because when you talk about clones, you always imagine, or at least the way I imagine, I feel like a lot of people do too, is that it's you as you are right now, perfectly fine, perfectly healthy. You copy yourself, and you as your personality in your current body can point at your clone and be like, this thing or this person or this version of me was born just a few minutes ago, just a few hours ago, at whatever time, right? This is a clone of me, right? I am the original, I am me, right? But does that get more murky if if your clone is younger than you, but you're the one that's dying, right? What happens if you're the one that's dying and your clone is the one who can actually live life, right? If you're suffering from dementia and you're losing your consciousness, you're losing your grasp on reality, right? But your clone is the one that's healthy and is at 100% in terms of mental fortitude. Who's the actual individual? Who if I would like to put myself into it, if I'm the one losing my mental capacity and I have a clone of myself, who's actually to meet in that case? Right? If I'm losing my own personality, but there's a clone of me that isn't me, right? Isn't my original body, wasn't born on my birth date, but has retained my personality, memories, and experience.
I actually like argue that that's actually not murky because you as your original self are or you are the person that has that is dying. That is you, your original self. The clone that's developed that's a younger version of you is not who you are, right? I have an argument that I feel like makes it a lot more murky because so the whole my argument because of this is because that clone of themselves. Well, this is my question to you: is does that clone have the memories that you always have had, or is it literally
I'll
developed and
say
tested?
yes. I'm
Okay.
gonna say yes. I'm gonna say
Yeah.
that clone is one for one neurons, synapses, all of your
Yeah.
memories, everything that you would be and
Yeah.
could be is that it's just younger.
Just younger, but are
Yes,
they
just
going to
healthy.
develop? Yeah, or like they won't develop the issues that like the mental problems
Let's
that
say
you
they
do.
will. Let's say it's one to one clone. No changes. They're just me.
Yeah.
But let's say I'm like, I don't know, in my 80s and my mind is ailing, right? Um, it's me but younger. Me in my 30s,
I
right? Me in
think
my 20s.
I think you are yourself, and you like your original self have died, like or it is going to like. I mean, the whole point is like you're going to die, right? I think that your original self, that person that's in their 80s, is the original version. I think where it gets murky is if there's a clone developed of you, and it doesn't matter what point in life it really is, that also has the memories of like you. I mean, it really comes down to like perspective, right? Like how this perspective really ends up happening, but has every single memory that you have, right? And then that also goes into how memories are developed. Are they developed because of actual experience, or can I implant memories? I think we said like you can implant memories, right? Like that's a thing.
Right.
False
Yeah.
memories.
Right, so what if this clone is implanted with the memories, the exact same memories as you, as like actually seeing a clone of themselves be developed right in front of their eyes? And yeah, they come out of a test tube and you know that yours is real, but how could you argue your memory versus theirs? At that point where they are legitimately the same exact human being as you is when it gets kind of murky of which one is the original.
Right, and that's
Does
why
that
I
make
posed
sense?
the question because that clone, it wouldn't just be. I mean, of course, and this is where it gets into a little bit hazy because sci-fi can have so many different variations or takes on clones, right? But the way I'm coming at it is from the perspective of that clone is a one-to-one copy
Uh-huh.
of you,
Yeah.
and because like in theory, because it retains your memories, experiences, and like just general mental imaging, right? It should in theory have the exact same personality as you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
It should, like, my clone of me should be just as disappointed when Nikib hands me a box as my ailing 80-year-old mind of me would be, right?
I wouldn't hand you a box. I I don't know what I'd do honestly, because
All right,
I'd be the
let's leave
same
that
age.
one there. But
Um,
point being, like, it would be the exact same copy. So then that's where it gets murky of if, like, the thing is, I know you said for you it's an easy question. In my
it's an easy
opinion, I
question.
feel like you could almost argue that like whoever's the original never changes, right? My ailing body is still the original. That's just a fact. That's just as clear as the sky is blue, right?
The only time the question is easy for me is when they are not the same exact age, like
Okay.
literally everything. Because when it's a clone that's developed that's younger than you, say it's like a baby, right? Because then they will experience various different things that you don't, that you haven't. You know, when they are literally the exact same and they come out, like say you're in your 20s and there's a clone developed of you that is the exact same age, like in terms of like development, same
Mm.
implant, like memories of before they were I guess born. When that clone is actually born, how different, like how could you determine who is the original? Because technically they have the same memories, they have the same experiences, they have the same personality as you. But when something is developed that's younger than you, they can develop, they can experience various different things that you, as an old man, may or may not have.
See, then now here's the thing: is that then it gets into, instead of talking about who's the original and who's not, right? Because I get that if you're raised as a test tube baby, you could have different experiences even if you are implanted memories, right?
Mm,
If we assume it's not like that they have to still live out their own memories, that all of their memories are still your own, right?
mm,
The one area where I think it gets more murky isn't so much who's the original, but who's more of you, right?
mm,
And what I'll kind of give an example to explain that is like, if Tamid as a personality is, is who I am, it's how I react, it's the let's say just the stupid ass loud voice, right, whenever I start speaking, or me smiling when I don't know what to say because I'm uncomfortable, right? Or just me smiling because I do know what to say and I'm always smiling sometimes for no good reason. If this is who I am as Tamid, but my older ailing mind isn't putting that together, and I stop doing these things, or I'm not even stop doing these things out of a choice, but am not capable of it because I don't remember, or I'm like the dementia's hitting that hard, um compared to a younger version of me that, you know does do these things and is more representative of Tamid, right, of my personality. My question there would be like, who's the Tamid in that scenario, right?
Mhm.
Because in my opinion, the clone is more me than I am, even if I'm the one that's the original, but my mind is not able to like put my personality together.
Me and you have been talking a lot.
We have.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is very true.
Hey
Yes.
yo.
Okay. So, like while you were talking about like the whole thing about like Nikki was mentioning the clone that's just like a younger version of you that like grows up and like has a different experience. Have you guys watched Young Justice?
I saw season 1.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like Superboy in Young Justice, he's just a clone of Superman, like a Genomorph clone or whatever, and like basically he just has Superman's DNA and like is genetically just like Superman, but like in terms of personality, he's very different. Like I think he's like a little bit more aggressive. He like doesn't think as properly, isn't like I guess it's just due to lack of experience and like the fact that he doesn't have the same upbringing that Superman does. But like even though he's genetically just Superman, in terms of personality isn't like Superman at all whatsoever. So like it's like a take on like what would happen if like you were to be cloned and like how your clone would be like.
I mean, that's like nature versus nurture, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's pretty much nature versus nurture.
it's nature versus nurture.
Yeah. And that really depends on like the circumstances in which this theoretical clone or hypothetical clone is really
Right. Whether you're
developed.
raised as a baby from a
Yeah.
clone, or if it's just like a I think like an altered carbon sleeve, where it's like, no, this person just comes to fruition as a 30-year-old or as a 20-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Pratik, what do you think?
I don't know what the current hypothetical slash question is, because I feel like while you guys were talking, you guys were answering each other's questions and hypotheticals with other ones. So I'm lost. I'm sorry.
That's all
Okay.
right.
Why don't you just like the okay, the original question. A clone is made of yourself, right? At the stage at which you are at, and the memories have been implanted into it. That you have had. What differentiates you from that person? Who's the original?
Was there first.
You were there first, but they think they were there first. What you did? What talk?
What?
Pratik, you okay over there?
Yeah, did you hear me?
Not
No.
at all.
Oh, I said I have tax records.
Oh, I see. Oh, you have like I was here on my date of birth. My birth certificate is right there.
Yeah.
I filed my W-2 in whatever year. You did not.
They
he
think
thinks
those
he did.
tax.
He thinks he did. Right.
Yeah, he thinks he does.
Um.
Or he fundamentally believes he did.
He has all of your memories.
I think. I mean, if that person was there. Shit, is there a Paul Rudd movie about this? Except you come out better.
That's really specific. Why
What?
Paul Rudd? Is
No,
there
no,
an
no, yeah,
actual
yeah.
Paul Rudd movie
I
about
think
this?
there is a Paul Rudd movie about this where like you go into
Oh, isn't there
a
like a
Korean
Netflix
shop.
movie about him like
Yes.
living with copies of himself?
Yes. So basically,
Is that
what
what you're
happens is
talking
he goes.
about?
Yes. He goes into a shop, right? And
Mhm.
he feels like shit. Apparently, it's supposed to be like a massage or like some kind of self care or it's self care, I guess. And after it's done, he goes and he feels a lot better. It turns out it's because they basically took his first self and they made it so he would just be happier, right? And the thing is, people know about this and they keep doing it until they feel better and better and better. But then they kill off the first copy, or like the copy that came into the store.
Mm-hmm.
The original copy never died.
What
So
happened?
then the original copy is trying to go home. Doesn't have a car, doesn't know why, or something like that. I'm definitely screwing up details, but he goes
It's
home
also
to
a
his wife.
wild spoiler alert for anybody listening, because
Yeah, fuck all of you. You would have never
Oh
known.
my god,
just
I don't
kidding,
even
just
know what
kidding,
the
just
movie's
kidding.
called.
I also
Good,
don't,
perfect.
but I've heard good things about it, and I was meaning to watch it, but I guess I now know the plot.
Okay, well, I'm not going to ruin the whole thing for you, but basically, they fight to see who deserves to be the wife. I mean, who deserves to be the
Hello?
husband?
Wife.
With the wife. Who deserves to be the
Mm.
husband? Like, who deserves to be at home? Who should start a
Battle
new
of the
life
wife.
altogether and get a new, everything?
Jeez.
Yeah.
I fight with
Um,
myself for my own wife. Is that how that is that the general plot of the movie?
Well, let's say you were cloned, right? And then there's a better version of you, better looking, takes care of himself, happier. Like generally, wife is happier to be around your clone, the second version.
Oof.
Oh shit.
And then you're over here.
Wait,
like,
question.
Yeah.
Are you still a cuck if it's
What?
yourself? These are the questions we need to answer. Are you still a cuck
Yeah.
if it's still you?
I'm gonna say yes.
Yes.
I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say yes.
Because those are two different people.
Yeah, because
Like,
whether
it's
it's
the better
your originals
version
or-
of yourself. It's the
Yeah.
better version of yourself. Now, what would you
Okay.
do? Would you just be
Now-
like, fuck it, fuck my wife. I don't care her. I don't want her. I'll start a whole new life in fucking Wisconsin.
I'm gonna be real. I don't have an answer,
I love
nor
my
do I
future
want
wife.
to share anything related to this.
Me,
You
no.
guys got
Future wife.
anything? Because I feel like I'm ready to wrap this one up with
Yeah,
the cucking
I don't think
question.
I think we're gonna end up running in circles here.
Let me find the
This whole
movie
cucking.
so I could the cucking you said.
The cuck- Man, getting
Brother.
cucked by
Alright,
yourself is like a new level
better.
of low self-esteem,
Living with
isn't
myself.
Are you a beta
Living
or you're a
with
Chad?
yourself.
Living with
Okay,
You,
Are
that's
you-
the Paul Rudd
Yeah.
show.
The Paul Rudd
On Netflix, on
Is it a
Netflix.
show or a movie?
It's a show, it's a
Season
show.
one. Okay, it's a show. It's called Living with Yourself. It's a very good movie. I recommend it. IMDb rates it as
Not a movie, it's a
7.2 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes,
Banger.
81%.
Not calling it a movie, it's a show.
It's
Show.
a show.
it? Okay, so I guess we're ending this podcast off with a hearty recommendation from Pratik. If you don't like it, you can again take
You can
it up
blame
with
me. I don't
Pratik.
give a shit.
Remember this,
Let's
you are
go play
always your
video
own
games,
cuck.
man.
Remember, you are always your own cuck.
Is that
No
the
matter
life
what.
lesson from today?
Yes, yes.
Is
you
that
are
like a
always your own cuck.
self-esteem thing? Like this can be metaphorical or literal if you happen to have a clone of yourself.
I mean, if you have a
But for
cuck kink,
But
kinda
for
lit.
everyone who doesn't have a clone of themselves, which I like to think is all of our listeners, including the one from Brazil,
but I still.
Twins
you are your
clones, right?
own worst enemy and your only cuck. You can do it.
I mean, I'm saying like, if you have a kink for it, like you're kind of lit, right?
Oh god, like if you're into watching it.
Yeah. So that, like, if you
you just
imagine
watch
yourself
yourself?
as a cuck, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm ready to wrap this
Yeah.
up. I'm done. I'm done for today. I'm going to bed.
it's getting to that point in the day. Okay. All right, guys.
Alright.
Thank you,
Thanks for
everyone, for listening
listening.
to this interesting, very interesting episode.
I'm not a Trump supporter.
Thank you for bearing with us. If you made it to this point, you either really enjoy this content or you really hate yourself.
Yeah, either or. This is honestly like these types of questions are the ones that we're really trying to do, whether it's introspective or hypothetical, like today's topic. Next week, we are talking about work-life balance, which I'm actually kind of excited about. I think everyone really here has some opinions about it. So again, everyone, thank you for tuning in.
Oh, Tamita and I are gonna have fun with that one.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
yeah.
guys are gonna have fun with that one.
We-
I
I
mean,
think-
honestly, can
I think
experience it too.
genuinely every single one of us has something to say, and more than anything, I think our listeners unfortunately can relate. But we will share that for next week.
Yeah, well, we're gonna talk about the work-life balance. So again, thank you everyone for listening to the episode. Listening to the 4th episode of the It Be Like That podcast. Be sure to
And
tune
we'll
in next
see
week.
you on the next one. If you made it this far, you look great today.
All right, and that music should be tuning up right now. And
You
we're
boys and
gone.
girls.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.